a little bit of what we did. We'll wrap up, the interviews part, and then we'll move on to group discussions. Okay, so right. So we talked about what a cover letter was in the last session. Does anyone quickly want to take 1 minute to talk about what the cover letter is, how it is different from a resume or a CV, and what you should keep in mind when you're thinking of writing a cover letter to your dream job? Quickly, so that we can move on to other things as soon as possible.
It was a shortened version of the resume, and it's in the letter format. And we need to specify all the things we have. We need to focus on all the things that we couldn't really emphasize on in our resume.
Okay, yeah, so that's a very important point. You need to focus on the things that you couldn't focus on in the resume, and use relevant and the most important experience that you have that is related to the job, correct? And you have to write it in the format of a letter. And we also took a look at sample cover letter, and we discussed certain questions you can ask the interviewers during the interview process. So does anybody remember any of those? Have you thought about what questions you might ask in the future, when you're interviewing for an internship, for a scholarship? I mean, not for a scholarship, but for an internship or for a job. Did you have the time to sort of mull over what you might ask the employer or the interviewer? I'm going to call out a few names. So sorry I have to do this, but Himanshu, Hridya, Janet, do you want to maybe comment?
Yes, ma'am. For questions we could ask our the interviewer, we could ask about what is the typical work day for for that post. A few questions we should avoid asking are about the salary and money matters, and we should not ask questions that are easily, like, for which answers are easily accessible.
Right, great. One thing I want to emphasize is that it is not that you shouldn't ask about the money matters. It's not advisable in the first round. Usually you will have been given a range of the salary. So when things progress, then you can get down to the nitty-gritties of the money matters, at least in the beginning of your career, right? But when you've established yourself as a professional, then it is okay to think about the money matters and get straight down to the point. Especially if you're already secure, if you have a job, you're looking to progress, and the money is quite a bit of a factor for you to progress. In that case, getting down to the money matters is okay, right? So I don't want to completely preclude the money matters from the interview, but you're treading tricky ground there, so be aware of that, right? Okay. So during the interview, what we can do, that is what I'll start talking about now. So I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so you've done your preparation. You've looked at your resume. You know your resume very well. You know what the job description says. You know what the company is trying to look for, what the company is actually looking for in their ideal candidate. And you've anticipated the kind of questions they'll ask. You know who might be interviewing you. You've reached out to a few people who are already working in the company. So all of this is set. And now it's actually the day of the interview. So what are the things you might, remember, you might keep in mind to make the interview process itself quite smooth and seamless?
Ma'am, should dress up properly.
Dressing up properly, very good, very important point. And even if it's a Zoom meeting, it's important to dress properly, right? And what does dressing up properly do apart from making you look presentable?
It means that we are responsible even when it comes down to our clothing.
Responsible even when it comes down to our clothing. Okay, that's what you're talking about, how it looks to other people. What does it do for you?
A good dress gives us confidence.
Right. So it's important to to be well dressed, not just to put up the appearance of being put together or the appearance of being presentable, but also to feel that confidence coming from within yourself, right? So, and dressing up, while it is not everything, like the confidence just doesn't come from spotting a beautiful suit or whatever, it is part of it. So it's important to dress well. Okay. So during the interview, match your attire to the type and style of the organization, right? And what do I say when I say match your attire? Match it to the type and style of the organization. Say, suppose you're interviewing for the post of a um, content creator at an entertainment company, say like BuzzFeed, right? Uh, and you're going there, you're going to be sort of the person creating all the entertaining content on the internet. You're going to put out articles, you're going to create videos. Uh, in that case, going to the interview in a very formal attire as if you're interviewing for one of the most important scholarships in the entire world, that really doesn't suit the job, because on the job what you're going to have to do is come up with creative content, right? So it doesn't mean I'm saying if you're interviewing for a creative role you have to dress down or dress however you want, uh, but match it to the kind of attire that the panelists will be sporting. If the panelists are sporting something like casual, blended casual or elevated casual, whatever it is, just try to know what attire that they generally have at their workplace and try to match that so that things don't get awkward. Like if you go up all buttoned up in a suit and the interviewers are wearing very casual clothes, then that sort of does not match, the energy does not match, right? On the other hand, if you're interviewing for, say, the IAS interview, like the UPSC exams final interviews, or if you're interviewing for a consulting company, your dressing attire would be entirely different, correct? So match your attire to the type and style of the organization. It's always good to be formal, business casual in those areas, but just try to match it to the type and style of the organization. Point number one. Second one is enunciate slowly, clearly, and with adequate volume. And I cannot stress this enough. We all become a bundle of nerves whenever we are supposed to speak on stage or put on spotlight, or we're being interviewed for a very, very important job. Uh, uh, so it's important not to let the nerves get to you, and to take it a little slow, because even if you take your time and
Ma'am, you are
slowly
not audible.
answer question, that's better than being understanding of mistakes. Yes, Janet. Do you have a question? Someone had a question? Yeah,
Your
please go
voice
ahead.
is jarring. Ma'am, you're
Is it
breaking.
just
Your sound is
is me not
breaking.
audible? Oh, wow. Uh, how about now? Is it my internet
Ma'am,
or
ma'am, you are still not audible.
something else? Once. 1 second. I'll just. Okay, so it should be fixed now. Please let me know if you can still.
Yeah, it's
Is it
fixed
better?
now. It's better.
Okay, great. Yeah, somebody had a question. Mahi had a question.
No, ma'am, I'm just telling you are not audible.
Okay, okay, thank you. Great. Point number 3, do not slouch. Right? Your body language is very, very extremely important, especially in an interview, even more than presentations or anything else. In an interview, your body language is so much more important because the interviews are usually higher stakes. There's so much more to be gained or lost from the interview going well or not going that well, right? So, part of showing yourself as a confident and put together person is also not slouching. Um, Often we think about the interviewer again. This ties back to the main point that I mentioned in the beginning of when we were talking about interviews themselves, which is we consider interviews as a battle to conquer, and there's this huge demon out there that's trying to get us. And automatically, when you think of it that way, um, you tend to make yourself small, and uh, your confidence levels are not as great. Instead, when you think of the interview as a two-way street, as an opportunity for you to get to know the company as much as they want to get to know you, it makes things a lot more or lot easier, and it also helps you present a more confident self, right? Okay. Look into the cameras or at all interviewers. Generally it's advisable to look at the interviewers. If it's a Zoom interview, then try not to dart around too much, and try to look into the camera or look at the interviewer that is talking to you at that moment in time. And do not avoid eye contact or dart around restlessly. So,
Ma'am,
so
excuse
if
me.
somebody is trying to,
Can you please
yeah,
Your
reshare your
presentation is not visible to us.
oh, your presentation is not okay. Right. So that's point number 5. And point number 6, in case some answer goes downhill, drop the thought and move on. Right. So what have you done in the past? Is there any instance of when you had to, when you answered something in not so correct manner, or you didn't have an answer to a question? Uh, what were your feelings? What was going on in your head? And how did you deal with that? I'd like to see a few responses. Yes, Janet. Yeah.
Ma'am, you weren't audible.
Yeah,
Can you
please go
please
on.
repeat the question?
Oh, right. Please let me know if I'm not audible. I will find ways to make this better. I was just saying, was there any point in time where you had answered a question in the wrong way, or you had a wrong answer to a question? And what happened then? What were the thoughts that were going on in your head? Yes, Janet. Yeah.
So when I try to answer a certain question, I usually got stuck. I usually get stuck for words sometimes, and or if I don't get the wrong, sorry, if I don't get the right answer, also I get stuck, and I usually start slowing down, thinking about the right words. Sometimes, like even to the extent that similar words I may choose one word over the other for the slightest change in meaning. And then like slowly I will convey the answer, blend what was wrong with what is right, and try to get by.
Which is quite a good strategy, Though, because moving on is better than stopping and being stuck and not saying anything. Correct? So it's better to take things slow if you're unsure, and it's better to keep going if you're unsure. Because getting stuck or talking too fast and talking in a way that your content does not make sense, either of these options are not great options, right? So speaking slowly and moving on despite the mistakes that you've done before is the best strategy to take in case you get stuck at any point in a high stakes situation like this. Okay, great. Shreya saying I got a little nervous. Do you want to maybe elaborate?
Okay, so basically, and I've only given one interview till now.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I wasn't able to answer the question at all. So, the thoughts in my mind were like, am I gonna get this job? What's gonna happen next? And I've totally screwed it up. And yeah, but after that, I was able to answer the other questions, and it was not that bad.
Yeah, yeah. So immediately our mind jumps to the future. What's going to happen because I
Yeah.
did something wrong now, right? Instead of what can I do in the next 1 minute uh, that will help me regain whatever has been lost in this last minute. So think about the next step that is in your control instead of steps that are decisions and things that are not in your control. Okay, so moving on. Yeah, here are a few things that you really need to sort of think about when you're actually taking being responsive in an interview. Just don't need to go energy, right? If you're very disinterested or if you're coming across as weak, if you're not loud enough, then that's going to disturb the flow of the meeting. On the other hand, if you're too hyperactive, if you're uh, not matching the energy of the interviewers themselves, then again, that's not going to come across in a appropriate manner. So try to strike the right balance of emotion as well, not just in the words that you speak, not just in the body language that you sport and the dress that you sport, the emotional energy level that you also put forward, that is also very, very important, right? So these are certain things that you really need to think about. So do not come across as too stiff or too desperate. If you're easygoing, if you're confident, that is better than being too stiff or being overly um, deferring, like as if you were um, very, very desperate for the job and you do anything for the job. So that is not actually a good trait. Uh, being easygoing, being confident, that is better than being too stiff or too desperate. Okay. So you finally actually get the job. What do? You get a job offer not just from one company. Say you're one of those lucky people who get more than one offer. You get like two offers in two different cities with two different profiles and two different pay ranges. So how do you choose between these two jobs and arrive at the job that will make you most happy and that will serve your needs the most? So you ask these questions. Do you really want this job, or are external factors pushing you into taking this particular job? Do you feel overqualified or underqualified for this job? Do you feel like this workplace is actually quite nice, but you want to go to the office once and see it and really analyze things before taking the offer up? And again, at this point, it is important for you to revisit your non-negotiables, right? So you got a job offer in a city which is work from home, uh, and it pays maybe 5,000 rupees less than the other job offer that you got, which is situated in a tier 2 city. So what would you choose? Do I want to live in a city, or am I okay with living in a not so well known city? What matters to me more? Is it the money or is it the lifestyle? What matters to me more? Is it the profile or is it the money? So all of these things you have to weigh, take into consideration, do a cost benefit analysis, which I'm sure you all do really well, and come to a conclusion on which job you'd like to have the most. Okay, so regarding interviews, here are a few takeaways, right? If you weren't able to look at, to go through the sessions that we've had so far, the 3 sessions on interviews that we've had so far, just remember these 6 points. Once you get an interview call, what you have to do is research and assess not just the company, but also yourself. What do you want? What are you looking forward to doing? How will this help your career? That is point number 1. And the company itself. What is this company? Which department is this profile in? Who has worked there before? And can they help me out with the interview process? So those are the questions that you have to do at the beginning. Then you have to know yourself, which is you go through your CV. So these are my experiences, and these are the things that I've done in the past. And this one particular experience I can really highlight in the interview and use it to my advantage, because the job description asks for people who has this kind of experience. So go through your CV, your cover letter, and your JD, match things up, and then get down to the third point, which is to anticipate questions. Think about the kind of questions that might be asked. Prepare answers to them. Don't memorize these answers, but just have these points prepared so that you are not searching for answers during the interview itself. And fourth point is to use the interview to ask questions back to the employer, ask questions back to the interviewer to know more about the role or the company, because this is your chance, right? This is your story. You might not get a similar chance later on, right? So use the interview time to have any questions clarified, have any queries clarified, use that time. And finally, the body language, the dressing, the confidence, match the energy of the interviewers. All of these things come under, how you present yourself during the interview itself, right? And the final point is, once you get your offers, you carefully consider your options, think about what you want, what will best serve your interests, do a cost benefit analysis, and then arrive at your final decision. So this is what a typical interview process looks like for most of you who are still pursuing your undergraduate degree, who have not maybe attended an interview so far. These will come off, these pointers will come off use when you start actually interviewing and applying for internships and jobs. Okay, so that's about it when it comes to interviews. Any questions whatsoever regarding this? Any questions about interviews?
Ma'am, one thing about the outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is there any sort of dynamic clothing that works in all situations?
Okay, that's a really good question. Not sure I have an answer to that. No, I actually am not sure I have an answer to that. Usually, what I do is I think about I talk to people who've given the interviews before, and I ask them for advice on how best to be dressed. Right. So my worldview is a little bit limited there. Maybe you can look up answers on the internet or talk to people who can give you an answer. Maybe on that.
Okay.
Ma'am, what type of question we
Yeah.
can ask to the interviewer?
Yeah. So does anybody else want to answer that? We went through a few questions in the last session. Does anybody else want to answer Piyush's question? No? No one?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Patrice.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to answer Piyush's
yeah,
question?
yes, yeah. So we can ask about like day-to-day job role for the particular profile, and also we can ask about like what are the growth prospect for this, like future growth prospect from like apart from this job profile. So these two questions I can remember from the previous.
Those two are very solid questions. You know, how can I grow in this company if I join this company?
Yeah.
What will my work day look like? Very solid questions. What else can you ask?
Is it okay to ask about the job profiles? Like what would I be working on and questions like that?
No, that is very, very okay to ask. That is absolutely okay to ask. So, what is the project that you guys are working on currently that I will be onboarded to? Right. So, what area will I be assigned to? Say, this company works in both the oil industry and in agriculture, and it also works in optimizing, uh, you know, production in some factory. So whatever it is that they're doing, what is the job that I will be working on? So it's a very, very good question to ask, because you might be assigned to anything, and if you have a choice in, if you have a say in what department you're being assigned to, or what particular project you're being assigned to, that's also a good thing, right? So it's good to ask that question. So
Most
if that's
uh,
yeah.
most rewarding aspect of this job.
Yeah, that's a good question. You can ask your interviewer. So, what is it that you found very rewarding as part of this job, right? So, if they say, I love managing this team of people, and we have a really good synergy, and day in and day out we work together as a team, and so they'll say some answer regarding that. Or suppose you want to explore managerial, you are getting into a technical role, but you want to grow into a managerial role in the future. Then you can ask a more specific question about, so I know I'm getting into a data science role right now, but 4 to 5 years down the line, what will my prospects be if I want to get into a managerial role, right? If I stick with the company for 5 years. And so these are all good questions to ask. Okay, so it's 5:30. On that note, I will move on to the next topic, which is group discussions. Not sure we have enough time to discuss the entire thing. So can I take maybe 15 minutes extra today? Would it be all right?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes. Can I
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
one
Yes, ma'am.
question here? Like
Yeah, go ahead.
uh, how we can uh, do salary negotiation? Like I am pretty bad in that. Like how should we proceed there?
Very, very good question. Salary negotiation is also very, very important. Uh, so what they do usually, what employers do is they ask you for your previous salary. Now that is very commonplace in India, like especially in the software industry. But it's actually not a good thing, because what they do is they ask you for your previous salary, and then they base the new salary based on that salary instead of basing it on your experience or whatever you've done, like your capabilities,
Yeah.
right? So what you do is you go on websites like Glassdoor. There are websites, like, let me just type that in. So there are websites like Glassdoor, and you go there and you check what the range of this particular profile is. Say you're working at company X and you're applying for a data analyst profile. What is the average salary that people are earning for that profile, right? For that job. So once you have that range in your mind, you can negotiate. So if they peg it down to your salary, but the actual average salary is, at least 10,000 rupees higher than that salary, then you can say something like, I'm moving on from the current job that I have just to gain a promotion and to also increase my monetary benefits. The average, so I'd like to be paid for the role itself and not based on my past experience, right? Again, it depends on how much negotiating power you have, what situation you are in, maybe you really need this job and you have to move on, then in that case, things are out of our hands. But if you are in a position to negotiate, use these websites like Glassdoor and ask people for their salaries, right? Now, this might be a very unpopular thing to say, but being transparent about your salary will tell other people, um, will give an opportunity for other people to understand what they can expect. Right now, generally women get paid much less for the same role than men, and they don't even know it. So if people are transparent about the kind of money that they get, then there's more negotiating power, right? So that's one thing. So that's how you can go about negotiating.
Okay.
Okay, so I have to move on now because we don't have time. So yes, I am super sorry. Is this visible? Is my screen visible?
It's not visible.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me just open up the new PPT on group discussions, and we will resume. Okay. So let me know if it's visible now.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So we move on to the final part of this workshop session, which is group discussions. Any idea on what group discussions are? Quickly, 1 minute. Does anybody want to say?
I think a particular topic is given, and then we are asked to discuss on the topic and come up with conclusions. And the employer usually checks if we are vocal about our thoughts and how good we are to our teammates.
Yes, absolutely. So, are we able to vocalize our thoughts and opinions properly? And are we able to get along with teammates in a polite and professional manner? Right? And the group discussions are generally used to test these things. So, here's what we'll do, we'll talk about what a GD is, we'll talk about why we need GDs at all, why, why are GDs a mandatory process in a lot of different situations, not just in job interviews, but also
Ma'am,
in
your
college
voice.
debating programs or in MUS, right? All of these areas. Okay,
Ma'am, you're not audible.
just give me 1 minute, okay? Okay. So I hope this is better. Better? Okay, I'm so sorry I have to keep doing this, but I do not know what the issue is. I tried resolving it, but okay. So back to the point. So we'll think about, what GD topics look like in general, what kind of rules and instructions are usually given. And there's something called leading the GD because not everybody in a group discussion just talks. Some people are also expected to lead or chair the group discussion. So we'll discuss how you can do that. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can actually participate in a GD, put your thoughts across in the most effective way possible. Okay, so that's the agenda for today. Great. Okay, so what is a group discussion? As we've already said, group discussions usually are used in job interviews to interpersonal skills, how you're able to get along with other people, and how are you able to vocalize your thoughts well, and how well are you dealing with conflict resolution, how do you listen to people. So all of these things, all of these are interpersonal skills that GDs are supposed to test you on. Now there are other kinds of GDs as well, in market or social sciences research, where you bring together 6 or 7 people, uh, and you're trying to bring out a new product into the market, a new kind of uh, like a pram. Do you know what a pram is? A baby pram, one of the things that you use to push babies along on the street. So you want to see exactly what kind of pram, say, mothers are looking for or fathers are looking for. Um, so you bring together, you bring together a working mother, you have a stay-at-home mother, you have a stay-at-home father, and all of these different people, you bring them together, and then you have them discuss the issues they've faced while taking care of their babies, and how having an effective uh, pram is something that would make their lives better. So based on that, you will design a pram that is most suitable to their needs. Say they want a very very extremely foldable pram, one that is affordable but also foldable and can be taken anywhere. So based on that, if you are somebody who's trying to, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're trying to bring in a new product into the market, so you do these kind of group discussions and you make decisions on how you can bring your product out. So that's something we'll not be discussing, but I just thought, I'll just mention it because focus group discussions are uh, quite an important part as well. Okay, so why group discussions? Can I have like a list of reasons?
What's the full form of FGD?
FGD is a focus group discussion.
Okay.
You can look it up online. We won't be discussing it, but it's quite interesting if you want to
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
pursue it further. Yeah, so why group discussions? Come on, let's have a few uh, reasons.
So that we get to know others' opinions as well on the same topic and gain some more about the topic.
Ma'am, to know the interpersonal skills of a candidate.
Okay, that's fair enough. But think from the point of view of the employer.
Ma'am, to work like the
Great. So
teamwork.
what kind
Which
of
teamwork
interpersonal
skills?
skills?
Team skills and leadership skills.
Yes, ma'am. Leadership skills and teamwork skills.
Teamwork. Yes. How well are you getting along in a team? So that's very, very important. Yes, absolutely. So that's the first point I mentioned. What else?
Ma'am, to know the point of view, to look at
Processing
particular
skills?
problem in different ways.
Decision
Listening
making.
skills, how are they important? And how do GDs help employers understand?
How well you listen to other people's opinions and
Yes,
uh,
fair
how
enough.
well
But also, why group decision making skills? Okay. Critical thinking skills, absolutely. So I just want to focus on listening here a little bit. Yeah, how well you listen to other people's opinions, because that is also important. Are you the kind of person who tries to hold, the entire 10 minutes and keeps talking for 10 minutes without, pausing to listen to what the others have to say, right? So are you sensible enough to talk only when you need to, and when you need to listen to other people? Are you able to listen? So that's a skill that they test you on. crisp and clear communication of core message. And this is very, very, very important because usually in a group discussion, if you start speaking, you'll just have less than a minute to make your point. And within a minute, you have to make a point that impresses the judges and something that contributes to the conversation in a meaningful manner. Right? So instead, if you use up that 1 minute saying things that somebody has already said, or saying the same thing over and over again that does not add to the conversation, then again you failed at communication. Right? So are you able to put your thoughts forward, make a point in the limited time that you have been given? That is also a skill that has to follow. And that is why we need group discussion. Knowledge, creativity, and spontaneity. Right? So these three again are very, very important. Unlike, say presentations where you have a week to prepare and you read up everything and you know your topic well and you have thought about creative ways of opening the presentation. So there is no spontaneity involved in a presentation, what we discussed at the beginning. But in the case of a group discussion, you don't know what the topic is going to be like. But you still have to be spontaneous, you have to be creative, and you have to show your knowledge, right? And there are no shortcuts to this. The only way you can be good at this is to have read things, is to have accumulated knowledge over a period of time, right? Very many months prior to the group discussion itself. So it's not something you can prepare for in one night and go, right? So these are also very important skills. And finally, value fit of the candidate with the company. So the employers also look at whether this candidate is aligned with the values of our company, right? Are they arguing for the causes that our company also argues for, right? Are their ideas similar to the ideas that we have? So all of these things also some companies usually think about value fit, and that is also something that they judge you on in group discussions. Okay, great. Okay, so types of GD topics. Any idea what kind of does somebody know what a GD topic looks like? Can you give an example of a topic that you've heard of before?
Social issues. Questioning questions like
You would have
in which we
seen
can
a
take
lot of
sides.
a lot of movies where there are scenes of group discussions and placements. No, has anyone seen the spoof of this group discussion scenario on? I think it's All India Bakchod or something.
Ma'am, you're breaking again.
Nobody?
There is a lot
Could
of
you
lag
No
in your voice.
ideas? Okay, it's very unusually silent. Can you think of ideas?
Ma'am, could you
Can
please
you think of
repeat the
topics
question?
that might be
Have
asked in group discussions? Anyone?
Your
the
voice is
topics which
lagging
may have
somewhere.
multiple
Okay,
views.
so we'll get straight into it. Social issues, absolutely. Absolutely. So they ask a lot of social issue based questions.
Environmental issues, ma'am.
Yes, argumentative or debatable topics in which you can take sides. Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Studies.
Social issues, absolutely correct. Okay, so I've got a few answers. There are general questions, okay? Like the first type of GD topics, they're very general topics where it's not necessarily argumentative, not necessarily social issue based, but there's sort of general topics that you can talk about. Right? Is it just now, or was it? Has it been like that for some time? So my internet looks quite okay. My mic is also quite okay. Hey, 1 second. Is this any better?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it's better now.
Yes,
Because
please.
my
Ma'am.
internet is all right. Um, mic also seems all right.
There seem to have been some
It's
kind
Can
of
you
it's better
lag.
drop
now,
a
ma'am.
message on the chat box if you can hear what I'm saying right now? If you can hear it clearly. Oh, wow. What a disaster. Oh, I'm audible, is it? Okay, great.
Ma'am, were you speaking just now?
Yeah, I was speaking.
Ma'am, in the just now there was a huge gap. We couldn't hear anything.
Right. Is it better now?
Ma'am, it's still
It's
breaking a
breaking,
little.
ma'am.
Your voice is breaking, ma'am.
Um, I have no idea how to resolve this, but we will try a new Okay, so this should be better.
Yeah, ma'am, it's better.
Yes, better.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I hope this continues. Right. Anyway, as we said, so there are general topics, right, which are not necessarily argumentative or which are not necessarily social issue based. And then there are argumentative topics, which I think Mahi talked about already, which are, debatable essentially. Say, a university education is useless in India today. That is a controversial thing to say. And some people might have some particular opinions on it, other people might say the opposite. So these topics are usually really good for group discussions because they lead to productive discussions, and one person says yes, the other person says no, and they talk about why yes, why no, and what can be done to resolve this controversy. So all of these things happen. Okay. And then there are abstract topics, which are usually more philosophical in nature. There are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. And in abstract topics, you have to strive to be a little more creative, right? The grass is always greener on the other side, for instance. It's a very, very abstract thing to say. And if you're starting off the group discussion, then you can peg it to whatever experience you've had in your life or whatever broader social issue is happening in the country or in the world. Right? So the sky is the limit for your imagination. So that's why you use abstract topics and you try to utilize the space and use your creativity to give the best possible answer. Right? And then there are case-based group discussions. Now, these are most commonly used in management
Your voice is breaking.
consulting group discussions, right? Um, does anybody? I'm sure
We
you're
can't hear you.
familiar with management consulting positions, companies.
I didn't get the question.
Any ideas?
Ma'am, could you please
Ma'am,
repeat
you
the
were not
question?
audible.
Oh, wow. Is it better now?
Yes, ma'am, but
Yes.
it's only temporary.
Yeah, the question was right. The question was uh, uh, do you know what
Ma'am, your voice is
management
breaking again.
consulting uh, positions are about? Yeah, so if yes, can you talk about it? Can you talk about it a little bit? Okay, so I'm back. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, I hope this stays this way. If not, we'll have a new session and we'll continue talking about this again in hopefully better technical circumstances.
It's far better now, ma'am.
Okay, I hope it stays that way. I hope. Fingers
Ma'am,
crossed. Fingers and toes.
can you please reiterate the question? What you have asked?
Yeah, so I was talking about caselet based questions, right? Cases or caselet based, which usually happens in management consulting interviews, right? So what are management? What do they look at in management consulting interviews when you're interviewing for a consulting job?
Problem solving skills.
Absolutely, problem solving. Absolutely, that's a very important thing to think about. Which is why we talk about cases, right? Cases or caselets. Now, cases are generally situations where a company or a firm or an industry has some problem somewhere, and you are in charge of solving that problem. And how will you go about solving this problem? That is what generally consulting companies look for. So, for example, here's a case. Take 1 minute to maybe go through it. Let me know when you've gone through it and tell me. Okay, so I hope I'm audible. I don't know if that one person was just an exception.
No, you're audible.
Okay, great. So have you read it? Has anybody read it fully?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what does this remind you of?
Ma'am, I guess we can take some digital marketing actions in regarding with this. How can we strategize our marketing policies? Is it
Yeah.
about Netflix?
Yeah, it looks like a Netflix case, right? So, how would you discuss this with your team members? That is the question here, because you're not doing this alone. So you have to discuss this problem with, say, 7 to 10 other people and come to a solution. So how will you go about this? So we'll discuss this later on, but this is an example of a topic. Usually, it's not just a one sentence topic that is given in a GD. It's an entire case, and you'll have to discuss this with 6, 7 other people and come to a sort of a good decision at the end, right? So it's one type of a GD topic. That's what I wanted to. We'll maybe have an activity where we actually have a group discussion and simulate one online. We'll do that soon. Okay, so generally what rules there are in a group discussion is that it is usually for 10 minutes. There are 8 to 9 members, and usually there is like a 3 member panel or 3 people. There are 3 judges who will read out the topics or who will read out the case, and they'll take 1 minute to do that. And then there's 1 minute for the leader to set the direction or the context. Now, the leader is somebody from the candidates themselves, right? The 8 to 9 members, you are the participants, but there's one person who will take the lead and start off the topic. Yes, Shreya.
Ma'am, who appoints the leader?
Sorry, who?
How is the leader appointed?
Yeah, so the leader is not appointed. The leader usually volunteers to be the chair, right? And I'll come to that in 1 minute. Come to that in 1 minute. So there's
Okay, ma'am.
1 minute for the leader to set the direction of the context. And then there are 7 minutes for the other 8 members to take the discussion forward. And then there's 1 minute for the leader to wrap up or summarize. Okay, so this is a typical GD that happens in the Indian context, at least. So these are the rules that you kind of have to be familiar with before you start off with your preparation for the GD, right? So to your question, to answer your question, Shreya, leading a discussion, what does it entail, right? So when you're leading a discussion, you usually there's like 7 people, and then you're given a topic, say, small cities are the lifelines of India, right? And you want to talk about it because you have a lot of knowledge about cities. So you say, I wish to, with the permission of the chair, with the permission of the panel and the judges, I would like to take the lead on this discussion, right? And then you start, once you get their approval, you start doing the discussion, right? So how do you do that? You listen very, very carefully to the topic and jot down the notes. Because taking up the role of the leader in that GD is not an easy task. It's a huge responsibility. Once you're given that 1 extra minute to talk, you have to make use of that 1 extra minute, right? You can't just take up the responsibility and not live up to it. So for that, first thing you need to do is listen very, very carefully to the topic and jot down notes. And volunteer to start only if you have a meaningful point to say. Say the topic is something on some social issue that you're not aware of at all, that you have no knowledge about, that you have very vague knowledge about. Then don't start talking in the beginning, right? Wait for other people to make their points, and then if you have a point, then you can make a point. But on the other hand, if it's a topic on a subject that you really know a lot about, then you can volunteer to start because you'll have a lot of things to say, right? So how you can start is by saying, may I start with the permission of the chair and the group? That's an appropriate way to start a group discussion. So there is a structure to how you start your group discussion as well, right? So you state the topic statement. So may I start with the permission of the chair and the group? And they say yes. Thank you so much. So the topic that we've been given is to debate on whether a university education is actually useful or not. The general opinion is that university education is absolutely indispensable, and a college education is what everybody aspires to, at least in India, and everybody sacrifices a lot of money to send their children to college. My views are similar. I think a college education is absolutely necessary. But of course, there are some drawbacks to a college education, especially in the fact that it might not necessarily prepare you for an occupation. And the 4 years you spend there, there's a huge opportunity cost to that. So maybe we can discuss going forward how well we can change the university system in India to ensure that everybody gets an opportunity to move up the ladder, right? So I've wrapped all of this up in 1 minute. I stated the topic statement, I gave the general opinion, I gave my views, and then I gave a direction for the discussion. So whatever you say as a leader has to be very structured. It has to show that your thought process is not all over the place, that you have actually thought this out, that you have a clear plan in your head. Okay? And just because you've said that 1 minute, you can't just sit back and relax, right? If you're the leader, especially. From the minute the other person starts speaking, you have to continue to take notes because you need to summarize what everybody has said. Maybe some people have said college education absolutely not required. We can get those jobs just by going for a 6-month course and getting that job. Nobody is looking at college degree anymore. Somebody is saying that. The other person is saying without a college degree, nobody will give you jobs. And the kind of relationships you make in college, they actually might set you up for life. You might meet your business partner or you might meet your significant other at college, and that is absolutely necessary part of one's growth, right? So different people might say different things. So all of these things you have to take note of and use it for the summary, right? And in the summary, you don't add new points. Whatever has been said in that 10 minutes in that little room by those 7 to 8 people, that is what has to go into the summary. Now remember, this is what you have to do as somebody who leads a group discussion. Final point, very, very important point, is that you don't have to know everything, right? Because then you will think about, okay, then you will never be able to volunteer for leading a discussion. Nobody knows everything about anything. But the caveat is that you should be able to facilitate a discussion. You have to have a fair idea of the topic. You have to have a fair idea of the pros and cons that are connected to the topic. And you have to know how to steer a discussion forward. Right? So those three are most important things when it comes to leading a discussion. So here's an example of an effective opening, right? Small businesses are an important lifeline of India's cities. I would like to take the lead in this discussion with the permission of the chair. Then you can talk about how the COVID-19 pandemic has really affected small businesses like tea stalls, tiffin stalls, tailors, craftsmen, beauty parlors. So, and then you can see a lot of us have continued to keep our jobs. A lot of us continue to have our jobs because remote working is a possibility for us who work on computers all day, for the middle class and the upper middle class. But for small businesses, it is absolutely not possible. So going forward, I would like my classmates and teammates to talk about how we can ensure small businesses are resilient to disasters and what kind of support systems we can install to ensure that they thrive even when pandemics arrive or even when there are huge recessions in the economy. Right? So that would be a good structure, good opening for this particular topic on small businesses. Then the final thing is how you would participate in a GD. Right? Very, very important. Grasp the central point of the issue and stick to it. If the topic is about whether a university education is useful or not, then stick to it. Don't talk about something that is vaguely related to universities. Like, I don't know what is vaguely related to universities. Like, say how education system in India is not so great or something, or primary education is not so great. Don't veer away from the topic. You can talk about primary education in some other situation. Right now, the focus is on university education. So talk about higher education, right? Don't talk about something else when the topic is something else. So that's the point I want to make. Jot down 2 to 3 main points. So the moment you get the topic, maybe somebody else has taken the lead. You still have 2 to 3 minutes to think about the topic before you can chip in with your opinion. So what you can do is jot down 2 to 3 main points. Right? Suppose the topic is humans need to colonize Mars. Humans need to realize our technological potential, and we need to go and colonize every other planet that is there. So immediately you jot down 2 to 3 points. What do you think about this? So maybe for you, you think that we shouldn't colonize other planets because the Earth itself is in great danger. We have to take steps towards making, solving things like climate change and other things. And you can also make a second point saying, why do we have to aspire to big things? Is man's only reason for existence huge ambition? Can't we just live a normal life? So these are 2 points that you jot down, and you can bring them up in your whenever you are given the chance to speak, right? Whenever your 1 minute turn comes. Okay. Structure your argument in your mind. Right? And I have talked about structure for very, very long. I have talked about how important structure is, not just to your speaking, but also to your writing, how you think, even that has to be structured. Right? I'd like to say just one thing: people don't have the time to listen to you think out loud. So whenever you're given a minute to talk about something, it's your chance, it's your pitch. So you have to put your point across in a very, very structured manner, so that it makes, it's easy for the audience, right? So structure is very, very important, be it in your writing, in your reading, or in your thinking, in your speaking, right? Okay. So how can you structure an argument? Start with an emphatic topic statement. Say, again, let's go back to the university education topic. You just start with, a lot of people may disagree, but I think that university education is absolutely unnecessary. That's an emphatic statement. You're taking a stand, right? And then you just can't take a stand and not back it up, right? So you take a stand and then you back it up with saying 2 reasons. There are 3 to 4 years of your life that are potentially used learning things that you will never use in the future again. And instead, one should pick up a skill or a trade and try to stick with it for the rest of their life. So you make that point and then you conclude. So yeah, I really do think that university education is not as much of a big deal as it is made out to be. And I definitely invite other people's comments on the same. Right? So structure your argument. Every one sentence that you say has to serve a purpose. And every one sentence that you say should not be repeated in the next sentence. The idea of the first sentence should not be repeated in the second sentence. Okay. So am I clear? I have been talking for very long.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question.
Yeah.
As a normal participant, should I follow the lead given by the leader, or should I give my opinions actually?
So in general, it is good to follow what direction the discussion is taking, right? That said, if you think that somebody is sort of derailing the entire conversation and talking about something else, it's absolutely okay for you to talk about. I'd like to chip in and add something here, because I'd like to talk about I'd like to get back to the point at hand. Saying that is absolutely okay.
Should I always agree with the leader, or I can give my against
You
views?
can absolutely disagree, and there are ways to do that, right? We'll go right here, right? So say if you want to make a point, that's what I was going to talk about in the next slide. So if you want to make a point, like you're not necessarily agreeing with somebody or disagreeing with somebody, maybe you're the first participant after the leader has just stopped talking, then you'll say, so I'd like to point out that, or I'd like to note here that, so and so, so and so, so and so. Or one point that I want to make is that, so and so, right? But if you want to disagree, you can absolutely do so. It is absolutely okay to disagree if you have a good reason to disagree. So you can say things like, I beg to differ, but I personally think that a university education is absolutely necessary for every teenager in this country. Right? I'm sorry, but I really must disagree with this because right? Agreeing. You can also agree with somebody, but also if you might have something else to add, you can add on to that. Right? I absolutely second your opinion, and I would like to add that another point. Don't say the same point that somebody else has said, right? Don't say the same point. Agree with them and then add to that point in a way that complements whatever they've said in the previous minute. I'm really glad you mentioned that because I also had a similar thing to say. So these are ways in which you can agree, disagree, make a point. What else can you do? I've given, options on how to disagree, how to agree. What else can you do?
I have a similar question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the leader gets privilege while marking?
No, the leader is a part. See, the judges only mark you. The leader is just somebody who's facilitating. That's all. So the leader does not get any privileges in terms of marking. Okay. See, sometimes maybe somebody says something. You think that it's a good point, but there is something wrong there. There's something little bit wrong. What do you think that is? I mean, are you agreeing with them? Are you completely disagreeing with them? Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe you agree with them on one thing, but you want to have a small disagreement.
Can add another dimension.
Yeah, you can add another dimension. So how do you do that, right? That is agreeing with reservation, right? Say somebody is giving an opinion saying how else will people get any kind of jobs if they don't go to universities, right? Which is a very valid point to make. So then you can say, I see where you're coming from, but I think jobs can be got even without an education if we are able to invest in the kind of skills and trades required uh, to push us forward in a particular career. Right? So there you're agreeing, you're empathizing with the other person. You understand where that person is coming from, why they're saying what they're saying, but you also want to refute that argument by talking about your own point of view. Right? Now, this is a very good exercise in listening, right? Because you show that, yes, I am listening to you, I understand you, but I don't necessarily agree with you fully. So that these are some strategies to sort of put that emotion forward, right? Interrupting, and this is something I wanted to say with the previous person. Somebody else is saying, I'm going completely off the topic. They're talking about something else completely. They're talking about job recruitment processes and how they are very unfair. That is not related to whether an education is necessary or not. College education is necessary or not, right? So in that case, it's completely okay for you to interrupt and say, so I actually would like to chip in here to say something. I'd like to add on to this with, can I actually interrupt you here? Can I add something here? So all of these things you can use to interrupt, to politely interrupt. Whenever you interrupt, it can't be very arrogant or can't be very sort of rude. So even an interruption has to be done politely and smoothly. Right? So here are some strategies you can use to participate in the GD. Some don'ts, right? Don't repeat something that has already been said. I've already said this before. Don't look indifferent or uninterested. Once you've said your thing, you've finished your 1 minute, and then you're just like, okay, I'm done now. I'll just sit back and relax. No. Even if you're finished speaking, or even if you're yet to speak, you have to listen with rapt attention to your classmates, to your peers, or to your teammates, right? And always don't just agree with someone. Say somebody says something and you're like, yeah, I agree with you. If that is your contribution, that's all your contribution. That's not good, right? So you have to say, I agree with you, and I agree with you because I agree with you, and I'd like to say something more. I agree with you, but I actually have a counterpoint to make. So don't just use I agree with you as a singular statement and stop talking after that. Okay? And finally, don't try to dominate the group, right? This is a discussion, it's not a debate. So don't try to be that person who's like overly loud, who's trying to show off their skills and hoarding up too much time, maybe talking for 2 to 3 minutes when they're actually supposed to talk for only 1 minute. Don't be that person, right? Don't try to dominate. This is a civil, polite discussion, and it's in your hands to keep it that way. Of course, this is a given. Don't make personal or sexist or casteist attacks or remarks. This is absolutely not the place for making such statements. And group discussions are supposed to be very polite, very civil, and very professional. Okay. So I have an activity, but I don't think we have time for that. So in a future, perhaps session, we can actually simulate a group discussion. But for now, this will be the sort of theory of group discussions, right? And I hope it was useful for you all. That will be sort of the end of this series of workshops. We will continue to have something similar again, but I just wanted to show you my thank you slide. Thank you all for
Ma'am, I have a question.
such great participants. Yeah.
Ma'am, does taking notes imposes a negative impact during the GD session?
Does taking notes make an impact?
Means, ma'am, pointing out the important points on paper. For my
You can
preference, during
Right. No, you can make notes, but your thoughts in your head and have so that when you start speaking, you don't start speaking random things. So if you make those 2 to 3 points on paper, then you'll better be able to articulate. That's all. But it's not good to keep looking at notes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Group discussions, presentations, interviews, communication in general?
Ma'am, I have a small question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, is leader needs to take a stand or he can start randomly like
So the leader usually does not take a strong stance and back it up with opinion. What the leader does is that he or she restates the topic, whatever the topic has been said. The leader talks about the general opinion, like what everybody thinks, what is the most popular opinion. Then he is allowed to give, or he or she is allowed to give her own views in like 2 sentences and then conclude. But the leader generally does not take a very hard stance. They just set the direction for discussion. Right?
okay.
Is it
Thank
clear?
you.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, I just wanted to ask, where can we find these slides?
These slides have not been sent, so I'll share that. The other slides have
Okay.
already been sent. I think you would have gotten it.
Ma'am, I didn't receive the other slides as well.
Oh, wow.
Has it been sent through email?
Yeah, I think it's been sent.
Oh,
I
okay.
also didn't get it.
We also not got the slides.
Sorry? Oh God, this you've been asking for a very long time. I wish I could just share it with you right here.
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Ma'am, in the placements, in the college placements, actually, I guess many companies held the GD sessions for
Yeah,
some round.
yeah.
So on what parameters, on what criteria they will shortlist the students?
These these are the criteria, right? So are you able to listen well? Are you able to use that 1 minute to communicate your main talk point or your main message? Do you have a broad knowledge of the subject? Are you able to talk about it at length? Right? And if somebody raises their voice or if somebody is going off track, are you able to bring them back on track? Are you able to negotiate with somebody else and sort of make them see your side of the argument? So these are the broad criteria that they look at to make their decision.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, do we have to be conscious about our body gestures in GDs?
Consciousness is, being conscious about body language, that is actually a bad thing. But have a, don't slouch, be confident, have a good demeanor, be dressed well. So all of these things go without saying. But don't be conscious about it all the time because that will take you away from the main point, which is to think about the topic and to give a good answer or contribute to the discussion productively. So that's what I'd say.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
How can you get the slides?
I could share them with you right here, but
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How can we clarify or ask for a repetition of a point in a group discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can say things like, I'm afraid I didn't quite get that. Could you say that again? So
Okay.
let me just put that here.
Ma'am, if
Yeah.
suppose a situation arises that I
Mhm.
want to volunteer for the leader and
Mhm.
someone else also wants to volunteer for the leader,
Mhm.
what should I do?
Usually, it doesn't usually happen because the person who does it first gets it. And then if somebody has already done it, you don't volunteer again, right? Uh, but, it depends on the situation. Usually the judge will tell you who can take the discussion forward. Or else, if you think that it's all right, you can let go of this opportunity or you can let go of this particular discussion, you can volunteer next time. And that's also all right. It'd be good for you to sort of step down. So it
Yeah.
happens
At
at the moment.
what point of time should I volunteer for being the leader?
Once the topic has been read out, once the topic or the case has been read out, you can volunteer to be the leader.
Yeah, ma'am.
Again, don't come across as like very, very eager. Like even before the topic is done, if you sort of volunteer, then that won't look great. So listen to the topic. Take 2 seconds to think about, okay, this is a topic I know about, I know something about. And then you can just, with the permission of the chair, can I volunteer to be the leader?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, what happens if you volunteer to become the leader, but you're not able to deliver your part well?
Okay. So in these cases, prevention is better than cure, right? So not to say that there is no cure, but if you're not confident about a topic, leave the volunteering to somebody else. But you have, say, there is a situation where you have volunteered, maybe you're not able to deliver the topic well, you will have a chance to redeem yourself at the end, right? So you start off in that 1 minute, you set the stage, and maybe if you feel like you've not done well, at the end you have to summarize, right? So you have those 7 to 10 minutes to make notes and do a better job in the end.
Okay.
right? So there is always a chance for you to make it up in case the first part didn't go really well.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions? I've sent her an email again regarding the slides, so you will get them.
I have a funny question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we are getting the another session,
Uh-huh.
similar topic.
When we are
Session
getting
was very
another
good, ma'am.
session. Oh, right, another session. No, we'll definitely have sessions.
Ma'am.
We'll definitely have more sessions. I'll have them scheduled. For sure.
Thank you. The session was great.
Ma'am, is this the last session?
Yeah, the last session for these particular things. I actually wanted to have some activities like where we'll simulate a group discussion online. So I'll maybe extend these sessions or look for a way to do that. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, how to make a point that will focus others' attention? Like when I give a GD, I make a point, but it does not affect others. Just I speak my point. That's it.
Right. So two things, Mahi, that I really think of. First thing is whether you're able to articulate it well, right? Whether you're able to project your voice loudly and whether you're saying it in a confident manner. Like even the audio of it, right? Even the acoustics of it, that matters, right? For people to take you seriously. And second point is even if you do put your point across in 30 seconds, are you giving one important statement, one uh, very important statement that is very meaty, that is actually food for discussion? So that one point you have to ensure that it somehow comes into your that whatever 40 seconds you take to say, and also the acoustics and the confidence with which you present it. So content, presentation, both of these matter if you want people to take you seriously. Right? Could you give me an example of a situation where you made a point and people didn't listen to it?
Ma'am, the topic was is cryptocurrency good or bad? This was the topic, and what point I made, I didn't get. I didn't remember.
Okay. So is cryptocurrency good or bad? Right?
Yeah.
So say people have been talking about cryptocurrency being a good thing, but then you think about it as maybe you're against cryptocurrency, then whenever you're making the topic, you have to start with a topic statement that is, quite emphatic. So I'm surprised to see a lot of people here glorifying cryptocurrency. I personally think that cryptocurrency is actually very dangerous ground to tread, given that there is no regulation on it in India, at least today. So it comes with an enormous amount of risk. Uh, and I think people should talk about it more, and we have not talked about it yet. Right? So just one point. I talked about it not being regulated. Right? Only one main point I made is there is no regulation on cryptocurrency, which means risk. And that is the point I made, which is why I think cryptocurrency is a bad idea. Right? So whatever point you make it in the shortest possible time, in the most emphatic manner. So that's all. Any other questions, comments, clarifications, disagreements, counter questions?
it okay if you're only able to contribute to the discussion once?
Absolutely. You'll only have the chance to contribute only once in general, right? Because it's a very, very short span of time and you'll be competing for space with 7 to 8 people. So if you speak for a minute or 40 seconds, one time, that's enough. More than enough, actually. Thank you, Himanshu. Hope it was useful for everybody else as well. I think I'm keeping you back for very, very long. There's only 34 people left. So if no one else has any questions, then we can call it a day maybe. And we'll definitely see each other again.
How can I get the slides? Actually, this was the first session I have attended.
Right. See, I've told the concerned POD, like the point of contact, they have to send it. I will follow up with them again, but you'll definitely get it. So definitely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, great. And please do if you want to contact me at any time, if you feel like you have any questions, if you have any writing that you want, feedback on, you can email me at this ID. Yeah, so I've put my email ID there, so you can definitely use that to contact me, and I look forward to. You can just talk about anything, from ranging from any advice you want. Maybe you're writing a science article and you want advice on that. You want better research writing advice or academic writing, anything of that sort. Okay, then, so if that's it, I think the first slides, they're available in the course portal. I think Lakshmi Nandan is saying that. So yeah, so that's about it. So thank you so much. Thank you for your wonderful participation. Absolutely wonderful experience for me. And we'll see each other again. That's it. I'll be signing off. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Good
ma'am.
evening.